right. Hello, everybody. So excited to be here. I'm Swift. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Major League Hacking, or MLH, as many of you probably know as SPY. And I'm really excited today to be kicking off our first live stream for the month of October as part of DigitalOcean's Hacktoberfest. If you are not familiar with Hacktoberfest, it is a month-long celebration of all things open source designed to help you, whether it's day 0 or day 10,000, get into the open source community and get contributing and really hit the ground running as a great open source citizen, which we need many, many, many more of those. I'm super proud at Major League Hacking to be helping to support Hacktoberfest. It's a near and dear mission to my heart. When I was a early career developer, I had to take my education in my own hands. I went to hackathons, I did capstones. Eventually, I worked my way up to an internship. But all along that journey, open source was a huge part of the fabric of my life. I actually made my first open source contribution, and about 15 minutes later, it got reverted because I had done something, introduced a bug into the code base. But despite that, I didn't get discouraged, and I kept at it. And ever since then, it's been such a huge part of who I am as an engineer. And what we're here to talk about today is how you can get started with open source in the context of a changing world. Right? This is the age of AI, and we need to be thinking about how we use that both to contribute as well as somebody who maintains open source projects to help us ensure we get the highest quality code. I'm excited today. I'm going to be bringing Brendan O'Leary on from KiloCode in just a second here. He is leading devrel on their team, and they are on the forefront of thinking about this exact problem. It is the perfect way for us to start Hacktoberfest and these streams. We may have time for some Q&A from the audience towards the end. So if you do have questions about any of the things we're talking about today, feel free to post them in the chat. I'm going to be keeping my eye on that as we go into it as well. And then if we have time, I'll pull up some of those at the end. It sounds like we might also be raffling off some swag or things like that too. So we'd love to see the participation in the chat. If you missed this stream, we are going to be cutting up all of the conversations I have this month into videos we'll be publishing after the fact to help you, think about open source and make sure that you can, learn from all of these amazing people that I'm going to have the privilege of talking to this month. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Brendan on here and we get him on stage. Brendan, how's it going?
Hey, how are you? Thanks so much for having me. Really excited to be here.
Of course. Well, thank you for joining me. I could not be more excited for this conversation. I got a small preview of what you're working on over at KiloCode from my team, and I actually got to play around with it a little bit. But honestly, I'm really impressed, and I think there's going to be so much that we can talk about today in the context of Hacktoberfest and in the context of AI. I think it's going to be an amazing conversation. So thank you for being here.
Yeah. No, very exciting. Yeah. And KiloCode has only been around for a few, like 6 months, but we're already seeing huge community around it, right? Which is like the story of open source. So yeah, really excited to talk to everybody.
Well, I saw some of those numbers and I want to ask you about them as well. So we'll get into that. But before we go too far, can you just introduce yourself? Who are you? And what's your role over at KiloCode?
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Brendan. I've been in software my whole career. I kind of started really in engineering, and product management. And so I always like to say that I'm not a professional developer, but I can play one on TV. Like I don't have a computer science degree, but I've been around software for a really long time. And then I spent 5 years at a large open source company called GitLab. And that's where my kind of passion for developer relations came to be. I spent most of my time there in developer relations and working with our community, right? The GitLab community is huge and has, massive contributions from all over the world. And that kind of got me hooked on open source and community. Since then, I've gone on to a few other smaller startups. I spent time in the security industry. I spent time in the data industry. But now I'm really excited to be back with developers. For the past 5 months, I've been at KiloCode, where I do developer relations. I spend time in our community with folks that are using KiloCode, with folks that are contributing to KiloCode, and with our customers, right, as well. That they're part of the community as well. And so, yeah, really excited. Didn't think I'd be learning as much as I know now about AI models and all that, but I think there's a good lesson in that for everyone. So hopefully that's what we'll get into here.
Yeah, well, there's so much to dig in on that. For those who are not familiar with DevRel as a
Mhm.
discipline, could you just give us a quick overview of what that means from your perspective and what it's actually like day to day working as a DevRel professional?
Sure, yeah. I think the biggest thing is, is when we think about, tools in the developer space, and that's a wide range of things, right? That could be tools, that could be frameworks, it could be, software that they use to develop. It could be all kinds of different things, right? Those tools don't really benefit from what we would call traditional marketing, right? Because the traditional marketing play of like very tops down is just not the way that typically developers want to operate, right? They want to know what are the newest tools that are going to help me be as efficient as possible. So in order to do that, you kind of need to talk to them and be with them and co-creating. And so that's where DevRel kind of came to be as this profession, right? Some people say, is it developer marketing? Is it not? I mean, it is in my mind, right? Like it's spending time with developers and understanding their needs, and then showing them how they can apply a tool that maybe you're a part of, um, to their everyday life, right? And so that really is what developer relations is. And then some of my developer relations colleagues would not want me to say the M word of marketing, but I mean it is what it is. It's just like it's not traditional marketing because that doesn't work with developers. You have to show, not tell developers, and so that's what DevRel is all about.
God, yeah, that's so important. The show versus tell, perspective. I think as I look back on my own journey as a developer, often, I would hear people say things, but it really wouldn't click for me until I actually saw it in practice and realized what the power of these different technologies was. And I know that you mentioned you don't have a computer science degree by background. Can you talk a little bit about what your degree is actually in and how that's played into your career a little bit here?
Yeah. So even worse than saying the word marketing, I'm now going to tell everyone that my degree is in business. So I I got a degree in business originally, and in theory, computer related business called information systems. Um, but I I don't really use most of that in my day to day. I think what it really taught me is the number one thing it taught me, and this is kind of crazy to say for a 4 year degree, but it's true, is like that kind of software doesn't matter if the humans don't come along with it. It's like software is not easy, but easy compared to making software and humans work together really well. And so I think that's what it taught me, and that has been true my entire career in software. Then is like yes, anything's possible, right? Like a lot of people will be like, could you, X, Y, and Z? It's like, well, you could do anything, but what you should do and how you should spend your time and what's important and how to bring humans along in the process is a huge part of the software process.
Yeah, I mean, that makes so much sense to me. And honestly, I was going to be a lawyer before I went to my first hackathon. I'd
Mm,
literally finished an entire undergrad in political science before I went to my first hackathon and realized that actually being a software engineer is pretty cool. But looking back, I think that those skills that I developed through my political science studies actually helped me quite a bit on my journey as a developer and as a leader at a startup, and a DevRel professional. Honestly, like
mhm,
things like writing and verbal communication, which are highly prioritized in that type of degree, ultimately became huge assets for me as I navigated my own career. Especially, I think also today in the age of AI, and I've got a couple of questions for you around that, but I feel like so much more. Everybody's becoming like a generalist on some level. Like we all have
mm,
this superpower now, where AI can help us do things that we were never able to do before. Whether that's coding and maybe without a computer science degree, or designing without being a designer by background. But I really think that these like multidisciplinary careers that involve code as a discipline while also touching other parts of life and business are just such valuable new space that's opening up. But I'd love to talk a little bit about AI in the context of your career too. Like, I have to assume based on where you work, you're
mm.
using AI on a regular basis. But can you tell us a little bit about how you're using, what your relationship with AI is right now, how you're using it, both at work as well as outside?
Yeah, I mean, it took me a little while to come around to it. To be honest, I was one of the, if you can't tell from my head, a little bit of the older crowd, right? And thus one of the maybe the early AI skeptics. In the sense that I think first of all, AI is such a huge broad term, but these early large language models we had, early versions of GPT. it was hard necessarily to see the utility, right? If you saw it like struggling to do what you thought was simple things, right? And so I think I was in the boat that a lot of developers were in, of being pretty skeptical about it. And then also as a writer, like, because, again, like you said, in devrel, it's a lot of writing, pretty skeptical about it. But really, I think the advances that have happened in the last 12, 18, 24 months have been kind of incredible in a way that now has me working at an AI company. So it's like from skeptic to working at a company that's really focused on AI is quite the journey. But I think it's one that's just reflective of the fact that, like, as these models have kind of gotten to the point where they can be faster and better at certain things than a human, that, like you said, unlocks the ability to do things that I wouldn't have been able to do before. So, one part of that is research, right? Like, I can dig into research papers now way more than I could earlier in my career. I can write a very quick blog and ask, Deep Research or Claude Research to go find me, academic papers that relate to this thing. And they do. And now it's not like I had to read 50 academic papers to find, the couple statistics that help me support my thesis in a blog. It's like it went and did that. I can find it. I can click on it. I can see it. Right. Of course, I could have Googled that. Right. Like, but it would have taken me hours of digging and reading and digging and reading, that now gets done in a matter of minutes. So that's one on the devrel side. And then on the development side, I think I've come to learn, or maybe not learn, maybe that's too strong. My thesis is we have a lot of noise on both sides of the AI chasm, right? We have an AI maximalist, the CEOs of these large AI foundational labs that are like, oh, developers are going away. In 6 months, all the code's going to be written by AI. Or like 2.5 years into some of these 6-month predictions, but and then on the other side, we have like, oh, it's kind of like a fad, or it's like, it's slop, and that's all it is ever going to be is slop. And I think the reality is somewhere in the middle, right? I don't think AI replaces developers, but I do think developers that are able to leverage AI start to replace developers that can't.
Yeah.
And so that's the conclusion I came to, and is part of the reason I joined Kilo. Once I started to kind of see this vision for like, oh, now, and this is, again, I know more about models than I ever thought I would do, but like as Claude Sonnet 3.5, 3.7 come out, as GPT-4 comes out, it's like now, oh, these models can actually like read the context of files that they're of a project they're in, and actually make, smart assumptions, or sometimes smart assumptions about how to architect things, rather than just kind of spitting out code, right? I think the visual difference of the meme that is Will Smith eating spaghetti is like spot on to code too. It's like, it's harder to feel and see with code, but it's like so visual. Like, and I hope for those that don't know, like early video generation models, someone tried to generate Will Smith eating spaghetti, and it's just so inhuman, and things are clipping through each other, and it's just like so obviously wrong. But if you now feed one of those things into like a VO3 or some of the more advanced video models, it starts to look pretty real, right? We just saw Sora come out in the last couple of weeks. I think the same has happened for coding, but not everyone's been able to see that, because again, it's not what you see. And the people that saw the Will Smith eating spaghetti code coming out, 18 months ago, like kind of discounted AI then, right? And haven't really picked it up since. And so I think there's a huge opportunity for those folks that do learn how to use these tools to really accelerate ahead of others.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think to your point around devrel being a show don't tell discipline, especially in the age of AI, where this stuff literally changes by the minute sometimes, that's even more critically important. Before our conversation today, I was poking around on some of the things you've been writing about and speaking about, and one of the things that really stood out to me was this idea of vibe coding versus vibe engineering, and how like that is actually an evolving discipline right now in terms of thinking about that. We already had some questions in the chat about vibe coding and those types of things, but could you talk to us a little bit about your philosophy around how you're thinking about using these agentic tools in your coding process?
Sure. Yeah. There was this concept of vibe coding, which again, like quickly got a lot of attention and then was quickly has been quickly, in a lot of ways, dismissed by people, right? Because it's like the idea of vibe coding is I don't even look at the code. I just go, operate on vibes. I'm chatting with an agent. I'm not even looking at the code, right? And I think that is actually very possible now for some things, right? Like if you're just kind of standing something up, like I'm trying to remember, I needed to do some sort of data analysis on data I had. And I'm not really a Python guy. I'm more of like a TypeScript person. And I kind of just vibed some Python, right? With like, hey, this is kind of what I have, and there's the data. Here's a CSV. Like, can you help me get it out? And it worked, right? But that was code that I was going to run once and throw away, right? And we've seen people vibe code, whole SaaS applications, and then have serious issues because they hadn't really thought through the actual architecture of the code. And so I think that it's true to say, again, I think this is right in the thing I was just saying about like AI doesn't replace developers, but developers using AI can. It's like, yeah, if you just vibe it, you're going to have a lot of issues. But if you can instead use AI, again, like I was saying, it's great at reading through a lot of information. So if I have a large code base and I'm not familiar with it, it can be really good at figuring things out that I might not have been able to figure out and doing it a lot better. And in the world of like, it's the most overused phrase today in the hype cycle, besides maybe vibe coding, is like agentic. But the problem is that is the right word. Like vibe coding, I'd rather say vibe engineering because you still need to have that software engineering mindset when you're putting things out. But agentic's the right word because the agent can actually these models can actually call out to different tools now, and those tools let it do things that it couldn't otherwise, like run your tests or open a browser and see what happened right when it changed the code. And that's such a different paradigm than just, oh, here I spit out some code, like good luck. That I think it is kind of changing it to say like, hey, this can be a tool that software engineers can use, not just somebody who's trying to feel the vibes on a weekend and get something up.
Yeah, I like to say now that code is way more disposable than it's ever been, but that doesn't preclude the need for actual engineering process as we think about it, right? You just have to be more willing to throw things away and restart, but certainly you still need to be a domain expert to really get the most out of these tools and be effective at them.
100%. Like it's like, and that's been true. Again, I think it feels different because it is kind of very different, but it's been true when other tools have come up, right? Like Stack Overflow was where we all went. And like, there's like, I even have the jokey Stack Overflow. I don't know if it'll show up, like Control C, Control V, right? Or Command C, Command V, Stack Overflow thing. Like, oh, I'm just going to copy and paste from Stack Overflow. Like, obviously you can't just copy and paste from Stack Overflow. But does that mean Stack Overflow is not a great tool that enabled a lot of us to learn and solve things together? Like, no, like obviously it's a fantastic tool for that. Same goes for again Google, right? Like I used to say my only marketable skill was to be able to Google things well, and in some ways that's still true, right? But again, that's a tool where you still have to use a discerning, engineer's brain against like what is happening and is this the right solution? But it can help you in a way that is, again, I think now faster, but it's just another tool. But again, it's like if a year ago, 2 years ago, I said to you, well, yeah, I'm a developer, but I don't like to use that Google thing, right? You would have said, I'm a little worried about this guy, right? And so I think that, again, being an AI minimalist and saying, I don't know, it kind of feels like a fad, I think we're going to look back on that as people that would have said the same about Google or Stack Overflow in the end.
I wholly agree on that one. I think no matter how you feel about it, it's here to stay, and we all have to take ownership over learning these skills. I'd love to talk a little bit about Kilo and understand it a bit more. So can you tell us what is Kilo Code? And then obviously this is going to, as we get into it, we're going to recognize this is a very crowded space, but how is it differentiated in the market would be my next question.
I was going to say, yes, it's a very crowded space, right? So Kilo Code is a VS Code extension that brings AI into VS Code. So at its core. Now we're expanding that. In fact, we already have just in the last month have released it for JetBrains as well. But the idea is KiloCode sits inside of your IDE and brings this agentic coding, again at the fear of overusing a word, but it being the correct one, into your interface, right? So the idea is it can have multiple modes, not just a chat where it's like you say one thing and you get code out. But it can actually have these agents that have different personalities and different abilities and different ability to like edit or not edit your code, right? So for instance, there's an ask mode where it can't edit anything. You can just ask it questions, right? And so that's different in a lot of ways from some other things, right? So a lot of the or some of the AI have like forked VS Code, right? So Cursor is a closed source fork of an open source project, VS Code, and that's like the Windsurfs and Cursor of the world is like, we're going to build our own IDE that's brand new, right? And then maybe on the complete other end of the spectrum, you have like a Devons and these other things that's like, oh, it's not even going to be, you're not going to be an engineer. We're just going to vibe, right? Like it's only going to be a chat interface. You're not even going to see the code. And then you have CLI tools like a Claude Code or Gemini CLI that are meant to kind of, again, live next to your code. I'm assuming people are still going to use their IDE to do their own code editing, but then they're chatting in their CLI with an agent. And so KiloCode is part of a family of extensions that say, hey, we're going to live inside the IDE where you already are and bring that kind of chat and agentic AI to it. So there's a lot of those too, Kilo, Rue Code, Klein, Augment Code. These are that kind of family. And so where KiloCode differentiates itself is we really want to be open source. So some of those things I named are open source, some aren't, but we're heavily focused on being open source. And then we're also focused on, not necessarily being the smartest folks in the room, but bringing together all of the best things that we've seen from other things. So for instance, we just introduced and are updating it next week, autocomplete, which is a feature that a lot of folks love from Cursor, but you don't really find in a lot of the open source world. And so we want to bring that in open source, a great autocomplete feature where you can hit tab and get, the next line suggestion. And so that is an example of like, we didn't invent autocomplete, but we want to be able to bring it in an open source way to the community, where you can, bring your own AI. And so, part of our theory here is like AI as a subscription service is not going to be a reality, right? So a lot of these folks, like a Cursor, for instance, have thought, oh, well, we're going to do a subscription service to AI, just like a subscription service to everything else in your life, right? The problem is all of the other subscriptions that have come before benefit from, scale, right? Like the economies of scale. But AI just doesn't, right? Like AI requires electrons going through a GPU and some minimum amount of those electrons, right? And it doesn't just scale that, oh, and as I have more users, each user costs me less. It's like, no, each user costs what they cost. And we've seen massive price changes happening in the industry. And so our goal is to not charge for AI inference, just bring that at cost. Like we can charge you for it, but we just charge exactly what the inference providers charge, which in some cases is free. Right now, there's a huge battle here going on between these AI companies. And so right now, like Grok Code happens to be free in KiloCode and a lot of these other tools because they're trying to fight for market share, right? But as that happens, we want our customers to benefit from that, and our developers and our open source community to benefit from that, not us, right? So we don't have a subscription model. The subscription model we are going to have is for teams, right? That need team features, right? Like the companies that need to have SSO and those kinds of things. We'll go make money with that, and we'll keep Kilo open source. And again, like I said, as there may be a race to the bottom for tokens costing less and less, that's great. Again, they'll never be zero because electrons through GPUs, but we want like our community to benefit from that, not us. So yeah, that's That was a very long answer to your question, but
I don't know.
that's the
That was
world
super
that I'm
helpful.
in.
I mean, it explains a lot of the explosive growth of Kilo, to be honest with you. Like, if you look at some of the usage charts and places like Open Router, and even some of the stuff that you guys have reported, like, it's definitely having a moment right now. And I think the fact that you're thinking about it in that way, I would have to imagine is driving a lot of that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's directly correlated. I'd love to say like, oh no, it's because they hired Brendan O'Leary and he's the best dev around the world. Like,
That's a big part of it too.
well, and
If you
that's
just
how
step back
got
for
to
a
be all. If
second.
my boss asks, that's all of it, right? But like, no, like obviously that's not all of it. Like it is the fact that we have this different view of the world, and came to market when we did that has been to our advantage because it meant, as Grok said, hey, we want to, again, this the models. I'm actually going to be writing an article very soon called "The Minimum Every Developer Needs to Know About AI Models," which is styled after, if anybody, again, it's like dating me, but there's this guy named Joel Spotsky. He started a number of very influential companies, the latest of which was Trello. But he wrote a thing that was the minimum developers need to know about text encoding, which is a great article to this day about like what do I need to know about text encoding, which and so I want to write the minimum you need to know about models. But the general is like Anthropic was the ones that came to market with Claude Sonnet 3.5, 3.7 that did this agentic thing, right? The ability to call out to a tool, say, hey, go read this file for me and give me the context back so that I can understand this code. And that for a long time, because for a decent long time is relative in AI world, but for a long time was the way people coded because it could do all this agentic stuff. And then of course, OpenAI comes out with GPT-5 to try and compete with that. And then Grok is trying to enter this kind of two-horse race between Anthropic and OpenAI. And so they say, oh, well, we're going to have it be free for a month or longer. And they have the benefit of that is they have a pretty well-off backer that can do that, right? And so that I think is this fight that we're seeing, which means that it's necessary for us to kind of understand. But we were poised to take advantage of that because we had price-sensitive folks because we're open source, right? And so price-sensitive folks are going to say, hey, maybe it's not quite as good as Sonnet, but if it gets the job done, and I don't have to pay for it, that's a big difference, right?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Well, as I told you when we were backstage before, I knew that you and I would have a lot to talk about, and we're actually coming up on time. But do you have time to give us a quick demo of Kilo before we go? I mean, I'd love to
I can
see
go
that.
real quick. Yeah, I can do a very quick one.
I've got a little extra time if you do, so I'm not super worried
Awesome.
about it.
Yeah, I do. I think.
Cool.
Let me just share a window. So I'll start real quick with just an empty folder. So again, here I have VS Code, right? And so this is like, you can see there's nothing here yet. And this is kind of the typical AI demo. So I'm going to do this one really fast, and then we're going to switch over, right? So I can say, here I have Kilo Code. And I mentioned a little bit, although we're going to get into it in a second, about the different modes that we can have. But again, I think the code mode is like what people are used to, right? And again, I have access. You mentioned OpenRouter. OpenRouter is a great tool that we leverage that gives us access to like 400 different models. And here I'm going to use Claude Sonnet 4.5, but again, I can use Grok Code Fast, which right now is free. And then I can say, make me a snake game in pure JavaScript and HTML, right? And this is kind of what everybody's used to, right? It's going to go out and make these AI requests and very quickly, start pumping code in my face, which is great and makes for a fun demo. But it's actually my least favorite thing to do, right? Because this is, again, something that I think is pretty universal to a lot of things, right? That could have been a demo of Claude Code. That could have been a demo of anything, right? So I'm actually gonna, if I can share a different screen, hopefully I can do it smoothly. I'm probably going to stop and then share again. Sorry.
No, you're good. I'll bring it back on here. I can.
But I want to share a repository, a little bit more of a, what a professional developer might see, right? Which is like a repository that already has code in it. And so here, this is actually just our landing page. That was it's all public, and so it's easy to be able to share. And so you can see it's a pretty decent sized project. It's got a lot of code in it. And like, for instance, if I open a browser in this so I can show it, all right, and I open up the live version of this page, right? kilocode.ai. We'll see it's a React app. I happen to know, but maybe my browser's not going to work. Anyway, but let's say I didn't know anything about it, right? And there's a team page and there's all these like pictures, and I'm like, I've got to add myself to this team page because I just got onboarded this team, right? I can be like, where does the team page come from? How could I add myself to it, right? And so this time I'm not going to say code, I'm going to say ask mode, right? And so we've got these different modes: architect, code, ask, and debug, and then orchestrator, which we'll talk about in a second. And then the ability to actually have custom modes. And so ask can't write any code, it can only read. Architect can read code, but can only write markdown files as you architect together, right? Debug mode can write and read code, but is focused on running the code itself to debug it, right? And so in this mode, when I ask it, it's not going to go and just start shooting code out of my face, right? Which is great. I could have done that. I could have said, oh, add me, right? But I want to actually learn, like, how do I add this? And so it's going to actually go through and it's going to try to read the files, and it messed up and it realized, oh, I didn't find the right file. So now it's searching for code, team related files inside of my directory. Up, it found source team.ts, probably related, right? And now it understands it. It says, okay, the team that comes from the about, because it's actually not the team page, it's /about. Okay, it comes from the team member card component. The team's defined in team.ts. The way to add yourself is add your photo here, update the team file with your avatar, and then update it with this JSON, right? Which is like the JSON that I happen to know because I wrote it, is the team, right? Oh, and also there's a fun way that you can actually, there's a little Easter egg, which anybody can find on kilocode.ai/about. You find me, I'll throw you some kilocode credits or something, right? But it shows me, it actually went through and walked me through this rather than, again, just shooting the code out at me, right? And then the beauty of this last mode that I'll talk about, which is orchestrator mode, is orchestrator actually starts without being able to do anything itself, and it will actually then delegate to it. So if I asked it to say, add a new section to our page that is all about the latest models that you can use with Kilo, right? So if I do that, it's going to actually figure out what's there already. It's going to create an architect mode plan to go figure out what can we do. How should we analyze it, right? Here we can see it's got this to-do list. It's like, okay, I need to analyze the current page structure, then design the models that are going to hold it, then implement it, then integrate the section, then test it, right? And so it's going to delegate that work. It just delegated this to a code thing. And you can see it's written a very detailed prompt to the code mode to say, hey, don't do this, just analyze what's there and then come back. And it will send the results back. So this is a way that, again, this is the idea of this agentic coding, where it's like, it's not just spitting code out at you, it's actually enabling you to like work through the problem with the agent. It'll actually ask me questions eventually once it has them as it's designing it. But it does that in such a way that is really, like more like a pair programmer and less like I'm just throwing code at you, right? And you see, okay, now it's analyzed what's there already, and it's going to send that back up to the orchestrator, which is then going to say, okay, this is how we're going to go do it. Anyway, so that I think is, and I'm not going to have it keep going here, but that is a way that I think is the way that folks are going to really interact with AI, right? Is this kind of pair programmer, help me figure this thing out, help me debug this error, not just, hey, here go code, right? I think that can be helpful, but it's when you start learning to like give it the right context and give it the right plan that it really becomes super powerful as a tool. And yeah, so that's Kilo Code in 3.5 minutes.
That's amazing. No, that was fantastic. Honestly, one of the things I often will tell developers when I'm advising them around how to use these tools effectively is to segment their process into different goals. Like, am I researching? Am I planning? Am I coding? Am I debugging? And the different modes in Kilo Code actually mirror the way that I think about all of those. The orchestrator one is even cooler because you're basically abstracting away a lot of that manual process that I myself am doing or advising
Mhm.
developers to do into something that the agent can help you do instead. It's very slick. It seemed like
Yeah.
there are a bunch of people in the comments who were very impressed by all the different
Yeah.
modes. Well,
Yeah, it's like I like to think so as a slightly more senior, not a developer, but let's say a slightly more senior developer, been around a while. Like I like to think of AI as this like very energetic junior developer, right? Like it's super energetic, it's very well read, it's maybe a little too confident. It's maybe, it's never going to tell you you're wrong, right? So you got to be careful about that, right? Because don't just want a yes person to you. But once you understand that, it's like, oh yeah, actually, an energetic junior developer can be super valuable to me as a senior developer to say, hey, go do this. Or an energetic junior developer who has a lot of time, if I'm a junior developer, can really help me pair, and like us working together can be super powerful because now it's like somebody to bounce ideas off of, right? And so those things, I think, once you kind of had that mindset, like you said, of like breaking up the problem, and what do you need to do to make a junior developer successful? Well, you need to break up the problem into the problem steps, right? It's like doing that can really help with AI as well.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I do want to make sure we answer at least one question from the crowd, even though we're a little
Yeah.
over time. So I'm going to pull one of these up here. This one is from Iman. He's asking, with these tools and technologies evolving so fast, there's obviously this constant desire to use them. But how should you, especially as a beginner, be balancing your kind of core computer science or developer fundamentals against just getting in and using these tools?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wish I had all the answers, but I think the fact that you're asking the question means you're already ahead of the game, right? Because you understand that there needs to be this balance, because there does have to be some balance, right? Um, it's kind of like I'm a parent of four kids, which is too many. But I always say like there's no such thing as great parenting, right? So there's not going to be one answer to this question for everyone. But if you're already asking yourself, how do I be a good parent? Like you're already kind of there, right? Like you need to be thinking about how do I balance these things, because you're going to have that basis in core fundamentals in computer science to be successful, to be a software engineer, right? And so I think that's really important, right? Like I often talk about the person that coined the term software engineering was, her name is Margaret Hamilton. She worked on the Apollo guidance computer, which is like the famous like green big button thing that you see in any movie about the Apollo space program to the moon. And she was very particular about saying it was engineering because at the time software was thought of as like this extra thing, right? Oh, we're building rockets, we're the real engineers, right? And she said, no, look, like the software is going to be the telemetry that gets us to the moon and back, which makes it just as life critical as any other piece on this spaceship. And so we're going to be software engineers first, right? And so I think it's important to remember that and have those fundamentals really sound, because I don't think AI is going to replace that. Right? Like if you think about LLM, what is it? It's a massive statistical model to find the mean, right? And you don't want to be just the median developer. You want to strive for above average, right? Um, so I think it's important to learn how to use it, but it's also important to have those basics. Like, and I would say the same thing to almost anyone in school for any discipline these days, right? It's like you can't just be a great writer by spinning up Claude and having it write everything for you. Again, like I said, can I use it as a great research, as a great, like the best thesaurus I've ever had? Like, as you've all heard from hearing me talk for a few minutes, I can be a little long-winded in my sentences. Is Claude great at making me more concise? Yes. But if I didn't have the basics of communication and the basics of how to write, I wouldn't be able to be successful with it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes so much sense. Well, the last question I've got for you is, if people want to learn more about Kilo Code, the company, the software, where should they go? What are some of the opportunities they should be thinking about in the month of October for Hacktoberfest?
Yeah, great. Yeah, so kilocode.ai is the place to go. KILO code.ai. And that'll give you a link to a couple different places that I recommend if you want to get started. One is our GitHub, obviously. We're open source, so you can learn from it. Also, our Discord. There's about 8,000 people in our Discord that are all ranges of, just getting started in their careers, trying to learn how to code. trying to learn AI, trying to learn all these different things, right? It's massive community, which has been really great to see. And then, of course, you can try Kilo Code if you want. From there, it's like I said, it's free and open source, so you can download it. Our Discord's a great place to learn, like, wait, okay, I don't have a whole lot of money. Like, how can I get started with this, with the free and open source models? We also have some on our documentation about, what free and open source and low cost models there are out there. And then, you can learn a lot more on the website. So
amazing. Well, Brendan, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. This was such a wonderful way to kick off Oktoberfest for me. I really enjoyed it. I feel like you and I probably could chat for like 5 or 6 hours uninterrupted here based on how this has been going. So,
I don't know who would enjoy it, but we would. You and I would.
You and I would really, yeah. We'll be talking out to the ether at some point.
Exactly.
But, hey, this was really awesome. I really appreciate you coming on. It seems like you're building something really cool over at Kilo Code, and we at MLH are really proud to be supporting you guys and helping get the word out about this really cool new technology. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Take care. Have a great Oktoberfest.
All right. Well, everybody, I just want to thank you all for tuning in. I know there were a ton of great questions. I'm sorry we didn't have a chance to answer more of them. Just so you all know, I'm going to be live streaming twice a week throughout the month of October on Monday and Thursday. We're going to be doing some variable times based on when our guests are able to join us. But every conversation I have is going to be about AI, open source, what it means to be a developer in this new unknown age. And I want to give you all the tools you need to be great developers, great open source citizens, and really build the software that's going to power the world in the future. So with that, I'm Swift. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Major League Hacking. I'm so proud to serve this community. I'm so proud to be a part of Hacktoberfest. We're so grateful to the DigitalOcean team for all of their work they've done to bring this event together. And, this is just an amazing community to be a part of. But we're really grateful to have all of you. Thank you so much for all the thoughtful questions and for the time, and happy hacking, everybody.